Toastmasters and guests, we move into a session where we all have been waiting for, one of the exciting parts of the educational session. That is our prepared speakers. Now, we have two prepared speakers this evening, and they are inspiring, they are motivating, they are encouraging. So, fellow Toastmasters and guests, our first prepared speakers, I asked her the question, what storms have you had to overcome? What storms you had to overcome? And she said this, I have overcome the storms of uncertainty and unwanted change. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, coming from the Strategic Relationship Path, Project One, Level One, speech title, I'm not the one writing this story. It's none other than Toastmaster, our Madam Secretary, Toastmaster Chanel Williams. Give her a rousing round of applause, fellow Toastmasters and guests.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Mr. Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. Before I start my speech, I have a question for you all. Who likes change? If you're fond of change, give us a thumbs up emoji. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. You can do it virtually. If you open your cameras, you can also just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I just want to get a gauge, okay? Our Vice President membership is a fan of change.
So thumbs up if you like change?
Yes, if you like change, a thumbs down if you don't. I see a lot of thumbs up. Okay, this is great. Thank you for participating. When it comes to change for me, I could go either way. I could be a fan of change or I could be opposed to it. It depends on the circumstance. And one of the biggest changes that's happened in my life is joining Toastmasters Club 7178. And when I did that, I didn't expect a whole other wave of changes to happen as a result. But as a result of joining Club 7178, I have become a more confident speaker. I have been able to say no more often. I have been less of a people pleaser. And I have this club to thank for that. But at the same time, while that's a good change, there are changes that I don't necessarily like, such as having to move, having my favorite restaurant close and wondering where I'm going to go to next, or even losing friends unexpectedly, especially in the midst of COVID-19. But through all of these changes, I've realized that I'm not the one who's writing the story. And I'll give you a perfect example of how I came to that understanding. It was 2019 and I was 25 years old, living in the city of Philadelphia and hoping to remain working there, to find out that I had a week left working for the city of Philadelphia. I had a conversation with my supervisor, John Mondlach, and we talked about certain possibilities and what could happen next. It was mostly a teary-eyed conversation because I was sad to find out that I was leaving, and he was sad to see me leave. And this is honestly one of the first moments when I realized that I wasn't the one with paper to pen, because if it were up to me, I would still be working for the city of Philadelphia and I would still be in Philadelphia today. But other plans were being made. And so I think we can all consider experiences and changes that have happened that where we haven't written the story. Going from working in an office to working at home, losing loved ones, having new babies be born. Perhaps that's a change that we did expect and we did want, but sometimes that's unexpected as well. And through all of these changes, while some may be within our control, I'm sure that some of the changes that have happened in our lives have helped us to see that we're not writing the story. So you may be wondering, well, if I'm not writing the story, then who's writing the story? I can't answer that question for you, but for me, I'll call him my best friend for this evening. He's the author and finisher of my fate. And because of all the changes that I've gone through, I've learned 3 simple steps to adjusting to change and to embracing change. Number 1 is to count your blessings. Yeah, we talked about this last week. We had a meeting themed Count Your Blessings. And it was based on that meeting that I actually realized that in the midst of change, there are some things that are constant that you can be grateful for. You can be grateful for life, you can be grateful for health. And as the change evolves, you come to be grateful for other things. For example, when I left the city of Philadelphia, I did not know that COVID-19 would be a reality. And had I stayed in that city, I would have been isolated for about 2 years, working from home, away from family, not really able to interact with friends. But because of a change that I didn't even want, I was able to be at home with my family. And to my knowledge, I never contracted COVID-19. If I'd stayed in Philadelphia, I may not even be here had I been exposed. So I've learned to count my blessings. The second thing I've learned is to be patient. When change happens immediately, you wonder, what's happening? Why is this happening? You get impatient and you try, at least I try, to change things as much as possible. But I realized that if I'm patient, I'm able to assess. I'm able to adjust. I'm able to be a bit more calculated and realize that there are certain things within this change that are still within my control. And thirdly, if you're faced with change, which you will be, know when to pivot. So when I left the city of Philadelphia and I came back home, I kept pushing to try and work abroad. I applied to jobs in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Switzerland, anywhere but here. But I sat down with my best friend who was writing the story and I said, okay, I'll give myself a deadline of August. If I don't find anything by August 2019, I'm gonna start applying to jobs here. And pretty much the rest of the story is still being written. I had to pivot. I had to humble myself and understand that the author and finisher of my faith was in charge of the story. And I had to embrace the change. I say all this to say that change happens. Storms happen. And while one storm subsides, another may come. But if you know who is writing your story and you stick with the one who's writing your story, I'm sure you'll rise above the storm. Mr. Chair,